I'm Theron Ramacharaka. This is just a brief note regarding dealing with difficult circumstances. I'll start with an example. A client of mine, a former client of mine in achievement training, had as a goal, a motive for achievement training. He'd established one of his goals, one of his, immediate life goals to be quitting smoking cigarettes. And he had tried many times to quit smoking, and he said he just didn't seem to have enough power of will to get it done. And I suggested, well, along with everything else that you're doing here in your work with achievement training, why don't you add this in? Add in a different point of view. I mean, you have recognized the necessity of power of will to be a factor, a strong factor, a primary factor in quitting smoking. And you're doing all kinds of work to develop your use of will. Why don't you, instead of considering that will is required for quitting smoking, why don't you think of it as in restraint from smoking to be a method for attaining stronger will to accomplish things like changing a habit in the future, for future use. In other words, he had been taking willpower to be a requirement or a method for quitting smoking. The goal was quitting smoking. I suggested a flip-flop, kind of a reverse engineering of the idea. Turn what had been his goal, quit smoking, into the method and place stronger will as the goal. Well, he thought this was a very interesting way to twist things around, and it made not smoking very interesting because it wasn't the goal anymore. It took the pressure off, quitting smoking being the goal, and it turned quitting smoking into like a game for him. And the goal now wasn't quitting smoking. The goal was the development of stronger will, which was something that he wanted anyway. That's just kind of built into the whole thing. So I call it reverse engineering, and it's a quick and easy way, just applying this reverse engineering idea to difficult circumstances, is a quick and easy way to get to the real metal of a thing. It's taking a difficult circumstance and looking for the real metal in it. And going at it from that point of view, it's taking advantage of difficult circumstances. It takes some of the difficulty out of them because dealing with the circumstance is no longer the goal. The pressure is off. Some of the pressure is removed from it because what was taken to be a requirement to deal with the situation is now the goal, instead of just being something that, is a requirement. It's now the goal itself, and the difficult circumstance is now the method to arrive at the goal, at the new goal. So it is a way to quickly get at the real metal of a thing. A generally stated technique for it, if I want to put it into a general statement, if you figure out what faculty is required, what skill or mental faculty or general principle or virtue, however you want to look at it, is required to deal with a circumstance in a healthy, constructive manner, then make that requirement, that virtue, that faculty, or whatever, that constructive thing that seems to be the requirement, turn it into the goal and use the circumstance as the method to arrive at that goal. It's a pretty simple way to get to the true metal of a thing and bring it into play, instantiate it. And just another quick note about power of will. The power of will has various modes of operation. I'm not talking about the things that it's used for. I'm talking about its modes of operation. One of them is perseverance. Another one is initiation. Persevering through something, that can be the kind of thing that we can find difficult. Let's say dealing with a difficult boss. How do you persevere through verbally abusive boss every day or every other day, however often it happens? How do you have the perseverance to deal with that over and over again? Constant put downs, negative insinuations about your character, and so forth. Well, you can look upon each circumstance that arises as an opportunity to develop the perseverance, rather than try to conjure up the perseverance to handle the circumstance. Use the circumstance and handle it appropriately to gain the stronger perseverance for other things. It's kind of like a little mind game, but it gets to the real metal of the circumstance, and it does so in a very easy way. Another mode of willpower operation is initiation, getting things started. If you're having trouble getting together the motivation or the power of will to get something going in a very grind your heels in sort of way, like grind in my heels, the heels of power of will to get going with something here. I don't know if I can do that. Well, you can use getting into the action as a method for developing a stronger will to initiate things. It's just kind of a little mind game, but it really does get to the metal of a circumstance and work toward establishment or instantiation or actualization of that virtue, of the real metal involved in a circumstance. Another mode of operation of will is restraint. This is one that a lot of people don't think of. Restraint from action, like quitting smoking. That's restraint. So when I mentioned to this client that I had the idea that I had, this reverse engineering thing, I used the word restraint. Consider that every time you want to smoke a cigarette, instead of finding it a very difficult thing to do, to dig in your heels and not smoke that cigarette, why not just view it as, hey, if I restrain or refrain from smoking a cigarette, I will be establishing stronger will every time. The mode of will operation called restraint. I will be enhancing that. Make that your goal rather than not smoking. Just use not smoking, refraining from smoking right then, as a tool rather than a goal. And the guy was able to quit smoking that way. And he ended up, of course, not only not smoking, but having much greater power of restraint, hopefully, that he was then able to apply in other areas of life when restraint was required. And insofar as a lot of people don't consider restraint when they think of willpower, this was very useful, hopefully, for him, because now he was very aware of that action of will and able to apply it in other circumstances intentionally. So, once again, I've just made this phrase up, reverse engineering circumstances to find their true metal and apply it that way. And once again, just to recap, when you have a difficult circumstance that you must get through, instead of considering getting through the circumstance to be the goal, consider it a method to develop the virtue that at first appeared to be the requirement. for achieving the assumed goal. Turn the goal into a method for developing what had at first appeared to be the requirement, which is now the goal. Does that make sense? Restraint, in other words, restraint having been the assumed method for quitting smoking, the goal, now the goal is practicing is greater power of strength or restraint using the method of refraining from smoking. It's just a twist of things. You can call it a mind game, call it whatever you like. Call it reverse engineering a circumstance to get to the true metal of it. But really, it is a quick and easy method for discovering the true metal in a thing and going straight for that.